And so with email, we're going to take what we're already doing, the content we're already building, and we're going to, own the eyeballs, so to speak, that traffic that you desperately need. We're going to put it on an email list and we're going to connect in that way because we own it.
Welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, the weekly show for nomads, work campers, RVers, and entrepreneurs looking to earn a living or build a business while enjoying the RV lifestyle. This week's host is Jim Nelson. Let's settle in and enjoy the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, brought to you by RV Life.
Hey, Jim here again at RV Life, and I'm really excited to share my conversation today with Liz Wilcox. Members of the RV Entrepreneur Community Group on Facebook may recognize the name, or you may have seen her on the Survivor TV show. But I first connected with Liz after someone in the RVE group commented on a post she made back in 2014. At the time, Liz was a struggling new RV blogger, and she went on a little rant about how little money she was making. But her post was totally good-spirited. In fact, she called it a pep talk for others in the same situation. Even though she was coping with her own challenges, Liz was cheering fellow RV entrepreneurs on, and she ended it with, "Where there's a will, there is a way." Well, she's clearly done something right. Fast forward 7 years, and LizWilcox.com is your go-to source for everything you need to know about email marketing. Yeah, we're taking a deep dive into a subject nobody loves. Well, except maybe Liz. That's because Liz is on a mission to make email marketing simple, and she does it in a fun, energetic way. On her website, Liz says email marketing is lucrative as hell. So sit back or keep running as she provides the steps you need to get in on some of this action. We talk about how to write a good subject line and how that is not the most important thing to get people to open your email. You'll learn about the different types of email, when to send them, and what they should say. Check the show notes for links to some recommended email management platforms, and keep listening for how to determine which one might be best for you. We also dive into automations and geek out on the DMARC, DKIM, and SPF authentications that help ensure your emails reach your contact's inbox. Don't ask me what those acronyms stand for, but having jumped through all those hoops myself, I can tell you they are very important if you're sending any email. Finally, we talk about Survivor and how Liz got on the show, and what survival strategies can help you when it comes to marketing your small business. Speaking of surviving, check out these quick messages from those who help make this show possible.
Attention detail-oriented explorers. Do you crave adventure and thrive in independent work environments? ID Plans seeks data rock stars to travel the country surveying commercial properties. Gain or use your tech skills like laser measuring and 3D cameras to gather data on everything from rooftop HVAC units to parking spaces. Challenge yourself in all weather conditions and enjoy the flexibility of managing your own schedule. This is more than a job. It's a chance to explore new places while putting your skills to the test. Competitive pay per project awaits. Are you ready to map your next adventure? Send your resume and work history to workcamperjob@idplans.com. Don't miss out. Have you ever wondered why your RV feels like a sauna on hot days, despite your roaring air conditioning units? Cool RV has a groundbreaking solution to this predicament. For just $84.95 per AC, you can transform your RV into a cool oasis. Best of all, the shipping fee is on us. Discover this new innovation at coolrv.com. That's cool with a K, RV.com. Podcast listeners can save 5% with code RVLife.
Liz, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be on this podcast. It's like one of my faves.
Oh, awesome. That's great to hear. I recently had a great discussion kind of all about marketing for small business owners. Listeners, check out episode 341 if you missed that. But that was really a broad overview where we talked about branding, content marketing, SEO, social media. So I'm looking forward to our deep dive here, specifically into email marketing. And you're clearly an expert there. So we'll get to that. But first, technically, this is the RV Life Entrepreneur. So when were you first introduced to the RV Life, and is that any different now?
Yeah, my life is totally different, but I was introduced to RVing and RV life and RV life entrepreneurship back in 2016. My then husband and I, we bought an RV, and I realized quickly after Googling how to take care of it that people actually traveled in those things and became entrepreneurs and started making money. And so I actually joined the RV Life Entrepreneur Facebook group, which I think is where Jim and I met and decided to do this episode. And I started learning from all the people in there. And I said, well, a lot of people in here have blogs. I'll start a blog too. And I started a blog called the Virtual Campground. I think they've been featured on this podcast as well. And it was all about kind of that. I'm a little sassy, I'm a little sarcastic. So it was a kind of this sassy, sarcastic blog about how to become, a full-time RVer. But while I was doing it, it was not very fun. It wasn't that hashtag RV life that I saw on Instagram. So I wanted to kind of peel back the curtain and say, hey, actually, sometimes it's this way or that way. And that's how I got into the RV life entrepreneur lifestyle. That's where I started creating my own products, learning about marketing, and eventually getting really good at email.
Cool. And we'll dive deep into that, like I said. But clearly, that's an entrepreneurial route. Like you said, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? What's an entrepreneur mean to you?
Yeah, well, I think it takes a lot of grit, right? Like you've got to kind of dig your heels in and say, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to stop until I get there, which I think is why so many RV lifers, so many full-time RVers are successful with entrepreneurship because it's this, non-traditional way of living, right? It's, hey, this is what I want. I don't want to wait until retirement. Or I'm not going to wait until this perfect moment. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it right now, and I'm going to figure out the money for it. So I love that, the RV life and the entrepreneurship kind of go hand in hand as far as like what it takes and the skill set.
Excellent answer. And you clearly have some grit. You've created that success for yourself. Anyone struggling with their email marketing now, if you haven't been there yet, you got to check out lizwilcox.com. Liz, you've got a zippy, energetic tone, a great brand, like we talked about in my previous episode, but it's a bold approach to simplifying email marketing for folks. And you're obviously a thought leader in that space. But I want to back up just a bit here, if we can. Let's talk about that Facebook group post and your long road to success, maybe how email marketing helped and how that became your purpose in life. I did first reach out to you when I noticed a comment on something you posted in the RVE Facebook group. It's been almost 7 years. And you started by saying, I'm not making money right now, like none. I've made about $100 since I launched my site. I get that. But then you go on to explain the challenges you were facing and your strong desire to succeed. In fact, you said, I want it right frickin' now. But you also said, it's time for a Liz Wilcox pep talk. And you cheered others on saying, where there's a will, there is a way. So you were already helping others face their own challenges while going into great detail about your own hurdles that you had to face. So where did your heuristic nature come from, and how has it helped you get where you wanted to go?
Yeah, so I just realized the more that I was in that Facebook group and the more that I got to know other people doing something similar, trying something similar, that not everyone gives themselves pep talks. But that is something that I learned at a semi-young age, probably around my teenage years, that, you know what, Liz, nobody's going to give you anything. There's no hype man like at a concert, that's going to come on stage before you and hype the crowd up. You have to be the one to do it yourself. You have to hype yourself up first. You have to be the one to believe in yourself first. And so I loved the RV Life community. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be that little hype man for myself, but why not share it with others so that maybe, I can make some friends, I can make some connections, and I can help other people. Jim asked about my background as well. I also have a background in education. So I'm kind of just built to be a cheerleader anyway.
That really shows with your brand. It's amazing. You've got a bold, energetic, there's some colorful style, and your tone is very direct, and you help people with a subject no one wants to deal with, email marketing. How did that become kind of your purpose? Why email marketing? How did that take shape?
Yeah, so you can't see me and Jim, but when he said nobody really wants to talk about it, I was glad I was on mute because I was laughing. It's so true, but I want you to know, first and foremost, email can be simple. And when I was starting my RV travel blog, I realized all the marketing advice out there was very business to business, or it was heavily based in storytelling. And you know what? I just, like Jim said in that post, like, I want it right friggin' now. I don't have time to tell a story. I need you to click over to my blog post so I can get that ad revenue one day or whatever I was chasing that month, whatever the goal was. And so I also realized that most people that were making money in the Facebook group from online marketing had an email list. And so Mama didn't raise no fool. I said, okay, I'm going to start my blog. I'm going to post this, that, and the other. But there's 1,000,001 of us. And, I've got to get these people on an email list so I can make a better connection with them, because that's what the gurus tell me. And so I got really, really good by basically ignoring all that, online marketing advice and just doing the same thing Jim just showed you in the Facebook group. Hey, I want to give you a pep talk today. If this is your dream too, here's what's going right for me. Here's what's kind of going wrong. But, we're in this together, and just understanding and learning how to speak to someone just as a, B2B, B2C, whatever, just human to human, H2H. I got really, really good at that. And then I realized all my RV life buddies weren't making the same money I was. And so that's when I decided to go all in on email.
Awesome. So I want to tap into that educational background you have and have you define email marketing. Now, I know we might get into the various different types because we could niche down into newsletters, promotional, transactional, all that stuff. But what is email marketing, and where does someone begin? They've got a product or a blog and they think, oh, email marketing. If they haven't found you, where do they start?
Yeah, so email marketing is not what you think. It's not those spammy ads, that junk you get. Remember, it's H2H, human to human. And so email marketing can be very similar to what you see on social media when you see, that really awesome account that creates the content, clearly has a community, etc. It's just taking it to the inbox. And one of the reasons why I love taking it to the inbox is because you own it. You own your email list, right? Raise your hand if you were alive in 2022 and there was a guy that bought a social media platform, and suddenly that social media platform has lost, half of its users, all of its advertisers, its logo and name, right? And so with email, we're going to take what we're already doing, the content we're already building, and we're going to, own the eyeballs, so to speak, that traffic that you desperately need. We're going to put it on an email list and we're going to connect in that way because we own it.
I like that, owning the eyeballs, because it's really the only place you do. It's in their inbox. So we're going to get to some tips and tricks about how to do that. But maybe we do touch on kind of just a brief overview of these different types of email marketing. I was mentioning newsletters. That's one thing that goes to the inbox. But when you actually send it out, you may have a promotional email or a transactional email or a welcome sequence or a drip sequence or some campaigns like that. Can you touch on your favorite types or tactics of email marketing?
Yeah, so I look at email as having 3 parts or 3 types of emails that are the most important in order to see success. And the rest you can fill in later. So when someone joins your email list, you have to have a series of welcome emails. Some people call this a nurture sequence, welcome sequence. It's all the same thing, okay? And that's just a few emails, maybe 3 or 4, that welcome people to the list. The same way every single episode of this podcast, Jim comes in, he does an intro. Oh, welcome. You're listening to RV Life Entrepreneur. Today's guest, we're talking about, let's get into it, right? He's setting expectations. He's telling you where you're at, what you're listening to, what you're going to learn. You do the same with that nurture sequence. Then there are newsletters. Those are timely, that you're sending out like a broadcast, right? Some people call it a broadcast. And I usually recommend once a week, just that connection piece. Hey, I've got this new blog post up, and if you are an RV life entrepreneur, these newsletters are the easiest newsletters in the entire industry, like across all industries, because you're doing something that most people aren't. Today I'm in Alaska. Next month we're going to Florida. That makes you automatically, more exciting to read than the average bear. Even if you're not doing RV life stuff in your industry, getting that personal touch, super simple. So just checking in like that, and then just giving them the content. And then as you do that, you got your welcome sequence set up, you're doing your, weekly newsletters. Then you can start sprinkling in the sales emails that Jim was talking about, right? And so you can do campaigns. I'm sure, you've got Monday through Friday campaign, or maybe you just, hey, I have this new workshop I want to sell, or we have this new MVP that's finally out. Do you, want to be the earliest investor or whatever? We have this Kickstarter, just you can sprinkle them in and then create launches and campaigns after.
Awesome. Let's talk about the how for a minute. So all of these things are great ways to get started, but how to get started? Do you have any preferred platforms for email marketing management?
Listen, I love ConvertKit. It's for creators, by creators, but I like to say I'm tech agnostic. What you should use is what works for your brain and what works for your budget. And so, maybe you even pause this podcast, you go to YouTube for 10 minutes, set a timer, and you say, okay, I've heard of ConvertKit, I've heard of MailChimp, and, this, that, and the other. And just watch a couple minutes of reviews or over-the-shoulder how-tos, and then, compare with your budget and just pick one. Jim, you know this. We all know this as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we complicate things. It's the same as getting on the road. There's 1,000,001 ways to start. There's 1,000,001 ways to pick your rig, right? But at the end of the day, you just got to pick one, sign the papers, and hit the road. It's the same with your email service provider.
That's a great analogy there. And we'll drop some links in the show notes for the different platforms available. I used MailChimp for years, basically a free account because that was our budget at the time. And I ended up cleaning the list and keeping the numbers low. Last year, we upped our game and moved up to Active Campaign. And that really had all sorts of new bells and whistles that we're really utilizing. And yeah, it can get pricey. But you mentioned ConvertKit. So we'll drop all those that people can do the comparison and get what they need. Like they might start off with that small rig and then jump up to whatever rig works for them. But a lot of these programs, they offer a tool called automations. So what are some of the best ways to implement automations? What are they, and what are some of the best ways to implement them that are available on these platforms?
Yeah, so honestly, I don't recommend too much automating, especially when you're just getting started with email marketing, because it's like a 2.0 strategy. Jim just told you they were on MailChimp for years, and now they upgraded, and now they're using these automations. RVE Life Entrepreneur has been around for close to a decade, right? And so now they have enough customer research, enough know-how to know what automations they need. But the first automation that you absolutely have to have from day one is that welcome sequence I talked about. This is an automation. When I join your list, I need to be welcomed. Remember, we talked about that. And so that is your number one automation that you should use. Also, if you do have customers, an onboarding automation, Jim talked about transactional emails a few minutes ago, right? That would be, hey, here's your invoice, or here's how to log in. Here's your shipping number. Those things definitely automate as well. You can also automate, failed payments. I have a subscription model. Ooh, those failed payments. And we just realized, actually, this is a great question. My assistant realized that our automation for the failed payments have been turned off for the last 6 months. And our churn, I couldn't understand. I was like, gosh, the product hasn't changed. It's improved. My visibility, like what is going on? Do people really not want this anymore? And it turned out, the failed payment automation it had like triggered itself off or something. And so definitely, the automations are good, welcomes people, etc. But make sure you're checking those every 6 to 12 months to make sure they're still up to date, they're timely, they represent your brand the way you want to, and they're turned on.
I can totally relate to that. And to clarify matters, I was referring to the tripods hat I wear in my three-legged dog and cat support community role I play in my other life. We used MailChimp there, and we do use an automation for welcome sequence. Basically, you've joined our community. Here's some top resources. You want to make sure, go to the start page if you want to know how to use the blogs and forums. But since we upped our game and moved into active campaign and got a little more, meticulous about it, we can know, oh, this person actually visited a certain page on the website. So now we know that they've been interested in our gear. So we might want to mention that in a different email and add them to a different automation. We also, in the gear blog, have an opt-in for, I want to hear news about promos and such. So they'll get a smaller little welcome. Oh, hey, thanks for purchasing. Here's a coupon code for this set of thing. How important is that opt-in? And what are the ramifications of auto-subscribing people to this stuff?
Yeah, don't auto-subscribe. Email works because it's consent-based. Jim mentioned earlier, sometimes those email service providers can be pricey. But here's the thing. We only want people on our email list that want to be there, right? So never really buy an email list, unless you're buying the entire company, right? I think Jim and I know a lot about that. Just if somebody asks for something, add them to your list, things like that. So you have to have some kind of opt-in, some sort of incentive, I like to call it, to say, hey, Jim, come over here and learn from me, right? And so I like to think of it as, if somebody's graduating from Liz Wilcox University, what's the degree I'm handing them? Well, make money with email. My opt-in, my incentive is that first day of class, right? It's, what do you just need to get started today to know you're enrolled in the right program, right? What's that first step they need? So that's the opt-in. And it just gives people a reason to take you and your industry and your solution a little more seriously, right? There's a reason why, if you do those mass subscribes, if you, buy an email list, etc., that doesn't typically work. Not only are you going to get, dinged by Google for sending emails to people, but it doesn't work because, Jim didn't opt in, Liz didn't opt in. When I consciously say, yes, I want to learn more from you, then email marketing really, really works.
RVing is more than just a hobby. It's a community. When you join RV Life, you're not just gaining access to a suite of tools. You're becoming part of a vibrant community of fellow RV enthusiasts. Share your experiences, learn from others, and make your RV journey even more memorable. Visit rvlife.com to become a part of our community and start making connections that last a lifetime.
It also builds that trust with your customer or your client because they physically checked a box. And when they get that email, you remind them, hey, you're getting this email because you checked that box on my website. And it starts that relationship off on the right foot. Not to mention address certain things like GDPR and other acronyms we might get into later. But how does email marketing and email marketing tactics compare to other strategies like social media marketing or content marketing, SEO, maybe in terms of like time investment versus reward?
Yeah, so I already mentioned about email being consent-based, right? And that's what gives email its high return on investment. They say for every $1 you spend with email marketing, you can get up to $40 in return. Well, I did the math, at the end of my 2023 year, and for every $1 I spent, I made $166 in return. So I kind of blew that stat out of the water. But again, that's because it's consent-based. So, Facebook ads, sure, they're great when you can learn and dial it in. But Facebook, again, it's not owned by you. So they can change their rules. They can change their terms and prices at any time. Same with social media, that reach. Back in the day when I started blogging, my reach was pretty good compared to what it would be right now if I started a blog, right? Because Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. Instagram wants you to stay on Instagram. So especially if you're trying to link out to content, sales pages, discovery calls, it's really, really difficult. And you have to use extra tools to kind of work around the algorithm. With email, it's a direct line to your customers. So Jim asked me about, time, right? It also is a little bit of an investment, not like social media where you have to post every single day, 3 times a day. Sometimes I see, you can email even just once a week, make that connection, remind them, hey, don't forget, this is that thing you wanted, right? And just get to the point. That is so much more respectful than spamming, people with content on social media. The last thing I'll say about that, the difference between something like social media and email is just the way we interact. I don't know about you, Jim, but when I open up Instagram, it's kind of to disassociate, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't want to think anymore. I've got to make dinner, but I don't really want to. And so let me just scroll for a minute, right? That's a very passive way of interacting on the internet. Email is the exact opposite. I open my email to solve problems. Where's my bill? Where's that freebie I signed up for? Where's the link to join Jim today, right? For this podcast call, right? And so I'm actively searching for solutions for things I consented to see. And so that's the difference. That's why it has so much potential. And that's why I geek out over it.
I love geeking out over it too, and especially about the time factor, because you mentioned putting an investment of time into email, and a lot of that can be done up front, and that time can pay off later. You're not doing it all the time. You can maybe put a lot of writing into these sequences, and then just make sure they keep running. But speaking of time, on your website, you say you should only be spending 20 minutes writing our emails each week. How is that even possible?
I love this question. Yeah. So remember, we talked about that newsletter, just needing to update our people and get our content out there. So I have a 20-minute newsletter framework, and, you just greet them, hey, Jim, and then you give that short personal update. A lot of marketers will tell you to tell stories. We're travelers. We are the best at short personal updates. We're walking around the campground. Oh yeah, we just came from Arkansas. All right. See you later. And so just 2 to 3 sentences about something you've done since the last time you emailed. And then you segue into the content, whether it's, hey, I've got this new podcast. Here's an update on our MVP. Here's the new link to the Zoom call we're having today, whatever. And when I say segue, it can be as simple as that caps lock on your keyboard. Anyway, ... What I really wanted to share was that Zoom link, that podcast. 20% off sale, etc. And then just get the heck out of there.
Thank you for confirming that. I think I'm doing something right, because with our Tripods newsletter, I have a framework set up, and it is more than 20 minutes, but might be closer to 30, 45 some weeks. But it's only because we have such a vast amount of content. That's our greatest complaint on our network. We've got 2,000 blogs and forums and everything, and there's all sorts of updates every week. But there's a framework. I've got a couple sentences, say, hey, how you doing? This is what you're missing. And then I've just got a framework of, this is what's going on in this blog, and here's the members' blogs, and here's the big event you need to know about coming up. And yeah, are you on our Zoom call next week? So building a framework out for these things really does help. But how do you get them to open it? What makes a good subject line, and how do you write that?
Yeah. So I'm going to ignore Jim's question for just 1 second, because he said something so valuable.
Great.
How do we get people to open it? A lot of people, maybe Jim included, think it's the subject line, but actually it's the from line. It's from Liz Wilcox. I don't really know what the subject line is, but if I'm very privy to what Liz is selling or teaching me, I'm going to open it anyway, right? For example, I've been listening to this podcast since 2016. I don't really know the title of the episode, but when I see that pop up on my Apple phone, I'm clicking the link, right? And so I want you, as you listen, as you create your email marketing plan, just remember, and Jim mentioned this at the top of the hour, to inject some of you into this, right? That's why I always talk about that personal update, because if they feel personally connected to you, you can kind of fumble the subject line for a minute. Any thoughts before I answer your actual question?
No, that's a great tip there. And it's a wonderful piece of advice that comes back to cohesive, consistent messaging and branding. So I want to know that my recipient knows it's coming from Tripods. That's their community.
Amen.
And it's all your community. So when it comes down to the subject, once they know, oh, that's someone I trust, Why do they want to open this issue? How do you write a good subject?
Yeah. So in general, as far as like length, you want it to be 3 to 5, maybe 6 words. More than 8 words, more than about 100 characters. Most people are checking their email on mobile, so they're not actually going to see the rest of it. So you might as well just get to the point. The second thing is to write your email newsletter first and think, if I was just sending this to Jim, if I was just sending this to Liz, what would I need to write, right? Don't try to write for the masses. This isn't SEO. Google's not scanning this, to rank it. You're writing it to a friend, right? You're writing to Jim, who just signed up and he wants to know more about XYZ, right? And so write that subject line from this. For example, if I was sending out this podcast link when it publishes, I might write something up. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. Except we had this trouble with Riverside recording, da 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 da. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. And then the subject line would be, maybe something very simple like, new podcast recording, or I can't believe I got on this podcast again, or we talked about, something that happened 7 years ago, or, 7 years ago today, dot, 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 right? And so I would just write it for the friend. And if I had just discovered this podcast, it might be saw this and thought you might like it too, something like that.
That's great. It ties the message back to the trusted relationship. It's more of a personal thing. Oh, this is from Liz. And oh, look, she was on one of her favorite shows. So I like that suggestion. And I'm doing this episode kind of for selfish matters because I'm taking my notes here. I hope everyone else is too. We talked about frequency, maybe newsletters once a week. Is there a sweet spot for any particular type of emails you're sending, the frequency?
Yeah, I think once a week is a good thing to aspire to. If you think, oh my gosh, Liz, I barely have internet. How am I going to send out something once a week? I'm going boondocking for the next 6 months. Just remember that high ROI, and I think that will help you get it done. But also remember, just like anything else, start really slow, right? Once a month is good, but I want you to move towards, aspire to that once a week. It's a good, healthy way to show that you are, number one, invested in your reader, right? People need to know that you are invested before they will invest into you, aka read your stuff, buy your stuff, etc. It also will help you become relatable. Remember those personal updates. Once a week, they're going to start to get to know you. And then, of course, it will help you stay top of mind. Remember, they consented to be on your email list. They want to know and learn more. And so, we have to stay top of mind. We have to say, hey, remember me? This is what I did, because they're actively searching for a solution. And if you're not the person that's top of mind, they're going to get that solution somewhere else.
Oh, for sure. And that consistency also matters. Like our readers know on Thursday, they're going to get Tripods News. Even if they don't know that, this consistency over time, it always dropping on the same day and time, that's when it's going to hit and it becomes consistent. And that kind of comes back to kind of analyzing the metrics. It could take a long time for them to start regularly opening it. So don't give up on those readers that are not clicking every single episode. Just keep getting that information out consistently at the same time. We talked about content a bit, and I understand you don't necessarily teach storytelling in emails. And with so much hype about storytelling marketing right now, why not?
I think it just goes back to what I said earlier about respecting the inbox. Our inboxes are overloaded, right? I mean, you don't have to tell me, maybe leave a review for Jim and tell me how many unopened emails you currently have. Chances are it could be in the tens of thousands, right? It's so hard to manage our inboxes because many marketers are not respecting our inbox. They're just, the same as social media. Post, 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 send, 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 right? And so with storytelling, it's the same. If you don't have time to write a story, chances are your ideal client doesn't have time to read it, right? If you're working with single moms, busy entrepreneurs, travelers, etc., we all have busy lives for one reason or the other. So if you can get in, just give that personal update that shows you're relatable and get to the point and get out, people are going to say, oh yeah, Jim, he just cuts to the chase. I respect that, right? And then when you go to write a sales campaign, when you have a longer story to tell, when you have a longer newsletter, people will respect that and say, oh, this is different. It breaks the pattern. it must be important because usually Jim gets to the point.
That makes sense. You want that brief messaging because storytelling marketing does play a role. It is important to share your story and show your weaknesses and such. But it sounds like the inbox isn't the place for that. But if you have the right messaging there and it's brief, they might hold on to that in their inbox. And then when they have the time, click the message and go to your website where you want them to be more engaged and stay there and read that whole story. So if you're not doing that in the inbox, what other approaches can we use to connect with them when they're, going through thousands of emails? How do we get them to engage and click?
Yeah. So I mentioned it earlier, again, like showing that you are invested. Hey, I just spent 2 hours reading this book. I traveled to this event. I spent 3 hours, revamping my website. Whatever those behind the scenes things are, sharing those things. You might think, oh, well, I'm business to consumer, Liz. They don't care that I just bought a new laptop. Yes, they do. It helps you stand out. It helps show like, oh, they bought a new laptop. They must be serious about this blog or whatever, right? It helps you stand out. It shows that you are invested. And remember, people will invest in those that invest in them first, right? And then becoming relatable, right? Those are those personal updates we keep talking about, right? Jim mentioned my branding. That's really relatable. I've got like some loud colors in the background, Seinfeld, NSYNC. The majority of my customers are like millennials and Gen X. When I was an RV travel blogger, the majority of my customers, almost 70%, were men in their 60s. I talked a lot less about NSYNC and a lot more about AC/DC, right? That was something that was more relatable to that audience, about how my first concert was Aerosmith, right? And so that was really relatable. So thinking about what's relatable or what's interesting is really going to help you. And then, of course, staying top of mind, not letting people forget about who you are, what your products are, and who you serve.
And that comes back to knowing your audience, understanding your why, knowing their pain points and how you fix them. And I think we've really covered a lot of great suggestions for messaging and such. But I need to geek out for a bit, having finally resolved some tricky domain authentication issues. What about DMARC, DKIM, SPF? What does all that stuff mean and why is it important? What am I talking about here?
Yeah, so Jim is mentioning some crazy acronyms that Google is pushing to be enforced. So DKIM, DMARC, and SPF, these have all been best practices. These are ways to authenticate. Yes, when Jim sends me an email, my inbox and the internet gods know it was Jim, and they know when it's not Jim, so they know when to block it or send it to the spam folder. It's always been a best practice, but it's never been enforced, because it's technical, we want people to email, etc. But I'm likening it to, none of us remember this, but back when cars were invented, if you had enough money, you could just go out and buy a car and get on the road. Then eventually there were too many cars on the road. There were too many accidents, and the government stepped in and said, you know what? Actually, you're going to have a license to drive. You're going to have to learn, we need to know who's in these vehicles. It's the exact same thing with email. When the internet was invented, if you had a computer, maybe a couple dollars, you could get on the World Wide Web and you could start emailing people, right? Well, now we joked about it earlier, but everybody and their mother, including a lot of scammers and spammers, are emailing you, right? That's why we have tens of thousands of emails that come every single month. So not the government, but Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, etc., all the big email giants, they've come in and said, you know what? You kind of need a license. We need to know who you are and if this is really you so we can stop all this spamming, right? And so that's all that it is. It's basically, you're putting a stamp and saying, these are my emails. This is, what to do if, someone's trying to spoof me, etc. So it's nothing to be afraid of. Yes, it's a little technical, but just like driving, it's worth the payoff to, learn it or pay someone to get it done for you.
I love the auto correlation there, the explanation there relating to, automobiles, because there is a lot of technology under the hood there. I actually couldn't tell you what specifically those acronyms stand for, but I can tell you they're very important. And I've always thought you don't need to know how something works. as long as it does. It's like when you stick the key in, you're supposed to turn the key and the key turns and the engine goes on. You don't need to know about all of the different technology under the hood. But these platforms we're talking about, they make it easy until you encounter challenges because of other woo-woo out in the internet, like DNS. Like I faced issues with certain things not talking to our servers. But once you have someone to do that for you, or you use these platforms that work like they're supposed to, you can address these issues. And if you've received an email about Google and Yahoo requiring DMARC, read it and use your email service provider to figure out what's going on there. I can't leave without asking you about Survivor. How did you come to be on the show?
Yeah, so spoiler alert, I'm an email marketer and I'm also on the current season of Survivor. If you haven't seen it, it's where 18 really crazy people get dropped onto an island and compete for $1 million. It's something I've always wanted to do. Jim mentioned that Facebook post at the top of the hour. I've always just been one to kind of stand out, do crazy things. I mean, you're listening to this podcast, you might feel really similarly. And when I moved back into my house or a house after living in the RV for 4 or 5 years, I remembered, oh my gosh, I have cable. And I used to love watching Survivor. I loved Survivor. And I Googled it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's still on. This was about in 2020, 2021 maybe. And I started watching it with my daughter. She was, I think, 5 at the time. And it became our Wednesday night tradition. And in the winter of 2022, we were watching it. Jeff came on and he said, is this your dream? Apply now. And I thought, because of my email marketing, because I had it all set up, I can finally apply to be on the show. My business can run itself and I'm going to apply. And I applied, and no joke, my friends, they emailed me less than 15 minutes after my application. I was talking to Jeff Probst, the host, about 10 days later, and now you're watching me Wednesday nights on CBS.
Congratulations for that. That's got to be fun. Can you think of any survival strategies that translate to the world of business and marketing?
Yeah, I think, here we're coming full circle. You've got to have grit. In the last episode that premiered, we had this reward challenge, and I have a lot of food allergies. And we won this reward. And guess what? I was allergic to every single thing in the reward. And, I could have let it get the best of me. I could have said, I quit. I can't believe they didn't accommodate me. This is BS. There's no way I'm going to last 3 more weeks out here. I'm dying. I want to go home. Just, I quit. But just like in the business world, there are going to be people, places, circumstances with more resources than you. Especially as an RV life entrepreneur, very often we don't even have proper internet connection to get the things we need done, right? And so the same as, being out there in the wild or playing a game, it's all about, not worrying too much about what resources you have and instead becoming incredibly resourceful.
You keep mentioning grit and perseverance, so we'll definitely drop a link to the book Grit in the show notes. It's definitely a must read for some people out there. But on your website, you've got workshops, a membership community, speaking engagements, freebies. What are you most proud of, and how can listeners learn more?
Thank you so much. I'm actually most proud of my membership. It's $9 a month, and I give you those weekly newsletters I kept talking about. I give those to you already written. You can take and make your own. At the time of this recording, it's 3 years old. I have nearly 5,000 users, and it's all been grown organically through building my email list. No ads, nothing. And so I'm really, really proud of it. And I'm also very proud of the price. I love offering it for $9 because, like that girl that posted in 2017 in the Facebook group, she had no money, talking about resources. No money. My then husband thought I was absolutely insane and I was being scammed. No internet. I had to go to laundromats and Lowe's parking lots to write my blog posts. And, I always want to serve that person that's just really starting out, believes in themselves, has more belief in themselves than any other resource. And so I love my membership. It's weekly newsletter templates. You can take and make your own across all sorts of industries. It's $9 a month. You can go directly to lizwilcox.com. there's a strip at the top that says, have you heard about my membership? You can click there to get all the details. I'd love for you to check it out.
Fantastic. And I do love how vibrant and energetic the website is for being such a subject that no one wants to talk about. And that is very affordable membership for a subject that I've taken copious notes about and will be implementing some of these things. So I encourage everyone to check that out and join us in the group to learn more. And Liz, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. I can't wait to see what we all do with email. Thanks, Jim.
Wow. Liz is just full of energy, and she clearly knows her stuff. It really shows on her website. In my recent episode all about marketing, Brooks and I talked about the importance of branding, style, and tone. LizWilcox.com is another stellar example of branding and tone that engages the target audience. But really, Liz has come a long way. After our recording session, she told me about the first time she was on the RVE Entrepreneur. She mentioned it may have even been her first podcast appearance and how she was so nervous and stammering. I didn't believe it, considering how natural and engaging our chat was today. She'll probably kill me for this, but have a quick listen.
Yeah. So strategies for growing a loyal audience, I would say always show up, be consistent. I email my people every Sunday night. One time I forgot when I was in San Diego visiting my sister, and I had almost 20 people email me asking me if I was okay. And that's because I just show up for them.
That was from more than 5 years ago. Liz may be embarrassed by that, but her messaging was still clear and thoughtful and totally helpful. Check the show notes for episode 164 to hear more. It's a perfect example of how practice, determination, and grit really do pay off when you focus on being the best you. Personally, I had some selfish reasons for talking to Liz today. I took copious notes, and I hope you did too. Together, we can connect with our audiences better by giving them the content they want and need from us right in their inbox, without immediately ending up in the trash or being stopped by spam filters. Speaking of email, subscribe to the RVE news blog at the rveentrepreneur.com/subscribe for all the latest podcast episodes, helpful articles from all us hosts here, and important updates about upcoming events. Until next time, happy travels and happy marketing.
Attention detail-oriented explorers. Do you crave adventure and thrive in independent work environments? ID Plans seeks data rock stars to travel the country surveying commercial properties. Gain or use your tech skills like laser measuring and 3D cameras to gather data on everything from rooftop HVAC units to parking spaces. Challenge yourself in all weather conditions and enjoy the flexibility of managing your own schedule. This is more than a job. It's a chance to explore new places while putting your skills to the test. Competitive pay per project awaits. Are you ready to map your next adventure? Send your resume and work history to workcamperjob@idplans.com. Don't miss out. Have you ever wondered why your RV feels like a sauna on hot days, despite your roaring air conditioning units? Cool RV has a groundbreaking solution to this predicament. For just $84.95 per AC, you can transform your RV into a cool oasis. Best of all, the shipping fee is on us. Discover this new innovation at coolrv.com. That's cool with a K, RV.com. Podcast listeners can save 5% with code RVLife.